The wine glass hit the table hard enough to make the silverware jump. My brother Derek's face was flushed, his voice carrying across the private dining room like he wanted everyone to hear. You were never good enough for special operations, Kat. Just accept it. Behind him, the Navy SEAL he'd been fawning over all night, some lieutenant commander named Brennan with a chest full of ribbons, had gone very still, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth. Let me rewind. The invitation came 3 weeks earlier. Family dinner, Derek said over the phone. Dad's 60th. Be there. Will you actually talk to me this time? I asked. Don't start, Kat. Just show up and try not to embarrass us. I arrived at Rossetti's at 6:45, 15 minutes early out of habit. The private room was decorated with navy blue and gold, photos of Dad's maritime law career covering one wall. Derek was already there, sharp in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He brought a guest, the SEAL, I'd learn later. Someone he'd met through his defense contractor job. Someone he was desperate to impress. Katherine, Derek said, my full name like a formality. You remember we're celebrating Dad tonight. Try to make it about him, not your issues. I don't have issues, Derek. Right? Just unemployment and whatever story you're telling yourself about your Navy career. I'd worn civilian clothes, jeans, a simple blouse, my hair down instead of the tight bun I'd kept for 12 years. I knew, like someone who'd washed out. Someone who'd aimed high and landed low. My left knee ached from the old injury, the one I'd stopped explaining years ago. Dad arrived with his girlfriend, all smiles and expensive cologne. He hugged Derek first, longer. My successful son, he announced to the room. VP of Operations at 41. Then he turned to me. The hug was brief, obligatory. Kat, good of you to come. Derek introduced the SEAL, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brennan, SEAL Team 3, 2 deployments. Brennan was mid-30s, fit, with the quiet confidence of someone who'd seen combat. His handshake was firm but assessing. His eyes lingered on me just a second too long, like he was trying to place something. Brennan's advising on a new contract we're bidding, Derek said, his voice full of pride at the association. Underwater demolition tech. Cutting-edge stuff. Sounds important, I said. It is. Derek's emphasis was pointed. Real defense work. Not like, he trailed off, but everyone knew what he meant. Not like whatever you failed at. Dinner started smooth enough. Dad held court, telling stories from his cases. Derek laughed loud, performed interest, kept Brennan engaged. I ate quietly, answered questions in short sentences, and watched the familiar dynamic play out. Derek the golden child. Me the disappointment nobody quite knew what to do with. The wine flowed. Derek's inhibitions lowered. Brennan, you should know, Derek said, gesturing at me with his glass. My sister tried to be Navy. Didn't work out. Derek, Dad said, half-hearted. No, it's fine. She should own it. Kat went to BUD/S prep, right? Or wait. He snapped his fingers mockingly. You didn't even make it that far. What happened again? I took a different path, I said quietly. A different path. Derek laughed. That's diplomatic. She washed out of the SEAL pipeline before it even started. Went to some admin school instead. Spent her whole career behind a desk, while people like Brennan were actually fighting. Brennan's expression was unreadable. I served honorably, I said. You served invisibly. Derek leaned forward. You know what kills me? You had the same opportunities one didn't have. You could have been something. You could have been elite. Instead you quit, took the easy route, and now you work at a fucking gym. The table went quiet. Dad was studying his plate. His girlfriend looked uncomfortable. I'm a physical therapist, I said, at a veterans rehab center. Giving back. Derek's voice dripped sarcasm. How noble. Helping the real veterans because you couldn't be one yourself. That's enough, Dad said, but weakly. Is it? I'm tired of pretending cat service was something it wasn't. You wore the uniform. Great. Lots of people wear uniforms. Brennan here earned his trident. He earned respect. You earned a paycheck and early discharge. Medical discharge, I corrected. Whatever. Point is, you aimed for special operations and failed. And instead of owning it, you hide behind this mysterious act, never talking about your service, acting like there's something classified about filing paperwork. I felt my jaw tighten. Across the table, Brennan was watching me with sudden, sharp focus. His posture had changed. His eyes had narrowed. You were never good enough for special operations, Kat, Derek continued. Just accept it. That's when Brennan set down his fork very carefully and said, "What was your rate?" I met his eyes. "Intelligence specialist." Then I cross-rated. "To what?" The air felt heavy. "I can't discuss it." Derek laughed. "See? Mysterious. Probably signed some NDA about data entry protocols." "What duty stations?" Brennan's voice had gone quiet, precise. "Damn neck." Then I was attached to various commands. "Which commands?" "I'm not at liberty to say." Brennan went pale. "What years were you at Damn neck?" Brennan asked, his voice controlled but intense. 2006 through 2008. Derek waved dismissively. "See? Admin work at some training base." "Kat, just admit you, Derek." Brennan's voice cut like a blade. "Stop talking." My brother blinked, stunned into silence. Brennan turned to me fully. "Damn neck. Intelligence specialist. Cross-rated, but you can't say to what." He paused. "Were you at the schoolhouse?" I hesitated, then nodded once. "Teaching or learning?" "Teaching." Towards the end. The color drained from Brennan's face. He sat back in his chair like he'd been struck. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "What?" Derek demanded. "What's going on?" "Your sister." Brennan was staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Do you have a call sign?" The question hung in the air. Call signs weren't common outside aviation and special operations. The fact that he asked meant he already suspected. "I did," I said carefully. "What was it?" I could lie. I could deflect. I'd been deflecting for 7 years, since the medical board and the forced retirement and the quiet exit from a world most people didn't know existed. "Reaper," I said. Derek laughed. "Reaper? That's ridiculous." "You're not. Holy shit." Brennan stood up fast enough to knock his chair back. "You're her. You're actually her." "I don't understand," Dad said. Brennan wasn't listening. He was staring at me with something close to awe. 2009. My first deployment. Pre-deployment workup at Dam Neck for close target reconnaissance. There was an instructor. He stopped, corrected himself. Not an instructor. A cadre member. NSW doesn't advertise who runs certain programs, but we knew. Everyone knew. Knew what? Derek's voice was sharp with confusion. That the CTR course had a legend running it. Someone from the community who'd operated at levels we couldn't touch. They never wore rank insignia. Never used their real name. Just a call sign. Brennan's eyes hadn't left me. "Reaper." "That's impossible," Derek said. "Kat was never." "She was never a SEAL," Brennan interrupted. "She was something else. Something rarer." He looked around the table. "Naval Special Warfare has a lot of components. Everyone knows the SEALs. But there are other units. Smaller. More specialized. Support elements that operate at the highest classification levels." My heart was pounding. This wasn't how I wanted this to go. "The Special Reconnaissance Team," Brennan continued. "Formerly known as the Naval Special Warfare Development Group's intelligence support element. They're the ghosts who go in before the SEALs. Deep reconnaissance, advanced force operations, signals intelligence in denied areas. Most SEALs will never work with them. Most SEALs don't even know they exist." Dad's face had gone slack. "Reaper taught us surveillance techniques that I've used on every deployment since," Brennan said. "Pattern of life analysis. Digital infiltration. How to shadow a target for weeks without being burned. That training saved my team's lives in Afghanistan. Twice." "You're mistaken," I said quietly. "You're thinking of someone else." "No." Brennan's voice was firm. "I remember. The limp. You had it then too, from some operation in Iraq. You were maybe 30 years old, but you moved like a predator. You could read a street, a building, a crowd better than anyone I've ever seen." He paused. "There was a story that went around. That Reaper had infiltrated Fallujah during the worst of the fighting, spent 3 weeks in country without support, mapping insurgent networks. That the intelligence product from that single operation enabled 24 successful raids." "Stories get exaggerated," I said. "Do they?" Brennan pulled out his phone, typed quickly, turned it around. On the screen was a military forum, a discussion thread about legendary NSW operators. Someone had posted about instructors who'd left lasting impressions. Halfway down, a comment. "Best teacher I ever had was at Damn Neck. Call sign Reaper. Heard she worked for the group in some crazy classified capacity. Taught me more about reconnaissance in 2 weeks than I learned in 3 years of platoons." Derek was reading over his shoulder, his face white. "What was your rank when you retired?" Brennan asked. "Master Chief," I said. D9. At 33 years old. 34. That's unheard of. That's. Brennan shook his head. You'd have to be the best of the best. Top 1% of 1%. Where I worked jobs that promoted fast because they were hard to fill. I said. Stop. Dad's voice was hoarse. Stop deflecting, Katherine. Is what he's saying true? I looked at my father. At Derek, whose smug superiority had evaporated into shock. At Brennan, who was watching me with pure respect. I did my job, I said. For 12 years, I did my job. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't public. Most of it will stay classified for decades. But it mattered. Why didn't you tell us? Dad whispered. I did. You didn't listen. I kept my voice level. When I came home from Iraq, you asked if I'd seen combat. I said my job was different. You said that meant no. When I made chief at 28, you congratulated me, but said Derek was making more money in the private sector. When I medically retired and you asked what happened, I said I'd been injured in the line of duty. You assumed I'd slipped on a ship or filed the wrong paperwork. Derek had gone silent, his earlier bravado completely shattered. You never wore your ribbons, Dad said. You never talked about deployments. Because I couldn't. Because the operations I supported were classified. Because the moment I said anything specific, I violated federal law. I turned to Derek. You call me a failure. You said I quit. I didn't quit. I served until my body broke. And even after I retired, I stayed in the community, working with guys like Brennan who come home broken and meet someone who understands. Brennan cleared his throat. Ma'am, the vets you work with at the rehab center, do they know? Some figure it out. Most don't ask. They should know they're being treated by a legend. The word hung there, legend, and I didn't know how to respond. I'd never felt legendary. Just committed. Just willing to do what needed doing, regardless of credit. I need air, Derek said abruptly, standing. He walked out fast, unsteady. Dad sat frozen, his birthday dinner forgotten, staring at me like I was a stranger. 12 years, he said finally. You served 12 years in special operations, and I had no idea. You had ideas. They were just wrong. I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. You built a picture of me based on your assumptions. I tried to correct it, but you weren't interested in details that didn't fit. Show me. His voice cracked. Show me something. Anything. I pulled out my phone, navigated to a folder I rarely opened. Found a photo. Me in full kit. Face paint. Plate carrier loaded with magazines. Suppressed rifle across my chest. I was thinner then, harder. My eyes looked older than my age. Behind me, barely visible, was a team of SEALs prepping for insertion. I handed Dad the phone. His hand trembled. When was this? Ramadi. 2007. I was embedded with a SEAL platoon for 5 months. We were hunting a high-value target who was building vehicle-borne IEDs. I did the pattern analysis that located him. You were in combat. Every day. Brennan leaned over to look at the photo. That's a Team 5 platoon. I know 2 of those guys. They both died. He stopped. Wait, was this the operation where the intel specialist got hit pulling a wounded SEAL to cover? I said nothing. Holy shit, it was you. They told that story at the team. Someone from the support element took frag in the leg and shoulder, but refused medevac until the mission was complete. Stayed on comms, kept feeding intelligence to the TOC while bleeding out. He looked at me with new eyes. You earned a Bronze Star with Valor for that. Silver Star, I corrected quietly. But it's classified. The citation can't be released. Dad made a sound like he'd been punched. Derek came back in, his eyes red. He'd been crying. I called you a failure, he said, his voice wrecked. I called you a quitter. I've been telling that story for 7 years, that my sister washed out of the Navy because she wasn't tough enough. I know, I said. Why didn't you stop me? Why didn't you tell me the truth? Would you have believed me? Or would you have demanded proof? Asked questions I couldn't answer, then decided I was lying. He flinched because we both knew the answer. I was jealous, Derek said, the admission clearly costing him. Dad always talked about your potential, how smart you were, how driven. When you joined the Navy, he was so proud. Then you stopped talking about your service and I thought you'd failed. It made me feel better about myself, like I'd won something. It wasn't a competition, I said. It was to me. He sat down heavily. I built my whole identity around being the successful one, the one who made it. And now I find out you were operating at a level I can't even comprehend. Success isn't a hierarchy, Derek. You've done well. Your work matters. But so did mine. Brennan stood. Ma'am, I have to ask, why physical therapy? With your background, you could work contracting, intelligence analysis, training. Because I'm tired of war, I said simply. I spent 12 years finding people so they could be killed or captured. I was good at it. Maybe too good. When I got injured, when they medically retired me, it felt like a chance to do something different. Something that builds instead of destroys. The vets you treat, Brennan said slowly. You're not just doing physical therapy. You're doing psychological support. You understand their world. What they've seen. I try. That's not failure. That's evolution. Dad had tears running down his face now, silent and unashamed. I'm sorry, he whispered. Katherine, I'm so sorry. I should have asked. I should have listened. I should have trusted that you knew what you were doing. Yes, I agreed. You should have. Can I know more? Not the classified parts, but the parts you can share? I considered. It would be hard, reopening that world after working so hard to close it. But maybe it was time. Maybe Derek's public humiliation had actually been a gift, forcing the truth into the open, demanding acknowledgement I'd stopped expecting. I can tell you some things, I said. Not tonight. But maybe we could get coffee. Just us. And I'll answer what I can. He nodded eagerly, desperately. I'd like that. I'd really like that. Brennan extended his hand to me. Master Chief, it's been an honor. If you ever want to talk to the guys at the rehab center, tell them who trained their instructors. I think they'd appreciate knowing. I shook his hand. Maybe someday. Derek stood awkwardly. Kat, I don't know how to make this right. I've been cruel. I've been dismissive. I've undermined you for years. You have, I agreed. Tell me how to fix it. You can't. Not immediately. But you can start by respecting me going forward. By trusting that I know my own worth. Even when I'm not performing it for you. He nodded. That expensive suit looking rumpled now. His confidence shattered into something more honest. The dinner ended quietly. Dad asked me to stay while the others left. We sat in the empty private room, the birthday cake untouched, and he asked small questions. Where I'd deployed, what I'd studied, how I'd earned my rake. I answered what I could, watching him rebuild his understanding of who his daughter actually was. Your mother would have known, he said finally. She always said you were doing something important, something that mattered. She knew better than to assume, I said gently. When I finally left, the night air was cold and clean. My phone buzzed, a text from one of my patients at the center. His prosthetic fitting was next week and he was nervous. I typed a response, reassuring him, reminding him I'd be there. This was my mission now. Not shadows and targets, but healing and presence. Not the spectacular violence of special operations, but the quiet dignity of helping warriors find peace. Different, yes. Lesser? Never. I drove home thinking about Derek's face, Dad's tears, Brennan's respect. Thinking about all the years I let them believe the worst because it was easier than fighting for recognition I didn't need. Maybe now we could start fresh. Build something true. Or maybe not. Either way, I knew who I was. That had always been enough. End.